He has launched over 20 ventures, mentored more than 6,500 founders, and helped raise $2.5 billion in funding. But he will tell you control is an illusion, mastery is something else entirely, and someday is the weakest excuse that a person can give to go through their life. And we're going to talk about that and what that means. So I would like to welcome Hussein Hallak today to the Mindset Medicine podcast. Welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here. I can't wait to dive into some interesting conversations that we're going to have today.
Thank you. That's a lovely introduction and exactly right. That's a good summary, actually.
The beauty of AI is, as I told you before I started rolling, I said, go scrape the internet and find me everything that you can find on Hussein. As we keep progressing with AI, that's almost like a good thing and a bad thing, because eventually it will dig into every corner that we've ever posted anything and just find it all. So I think it's something for people to have at the back of their minds. Are you good with what you've posted over the years? And maybe you should remove things if you're not, because it will be found as the AIs just get stronger and stronger.
Indeed. I think I am privileged to a certain extent that there are parts of my life that I lived without having the internet there.
Yes. Oh, I think a lot of people, let's say maybe over the age of 40, we had our childhood and teenage years without the internet, so we don't have to worry about most of that. But let's dive in, because you've got a very interesting story. And I know that you grew up in Damascus, Syria. What I would love to know is what moments from growing up there, what values have shaped you? Because when we grow up in an area far outside of North America, we do grow up with different values and we experience different things. I know because I lived in Cyprus for 16 years, a small Mediterranean island near Syria. It was very different. Some things are the same, some things are different, but I would love to hear how that shaped who you are today.
Absolutely. In fact, I was shaped by two competing forces, my life in the Middle East and my love for everything American. That's kind of the fight between them. So I think when I grew up there, the biggest thing that shaped me is having a tribe or a family. Our family was huge. My grandfather had 6 daughters and 2 sons. And just there's an army, each one of them, I think the smallest family was like 4 or 5. Whenever I go to our hometown, meeting the people in my immediate family is a task. You have to visit everybody. That taught me about how different people are, even though they come from shared backgrounds. We all lived in similar environments, but everyone had their own thinking. We would sit around, debate, talk, and explore ideas. And at the end of the day, no matter how viciously we fought over certain ideas and beliefs, we come together to have dinner. And that gave me, I think the biggest value is how important is our diversity. I think one of the funniest stories I usually tell is that 2 of my aunts lived next to each other and married 2 brothers. If you see the kids coming out of that room, that those 2 houses next to each other, one part, they were kids that were dark, like they were from Africa, and the other house, they were like Germans. They had blue green eyes, blonde hair, and it was kind of a testament to the diversity of Syria. For many people who don't know Syria, Syria had so many cultures pass through it. The Romans, the Persians, everyone passed through Syria, and because of the Silk Road, we were almost like everybody. So that kind of shaped me growing up, because I took these for granted. Only when I went out to the world, it's like, oh, when you go different places, there are people who look kind of like each other wherever you go. And I grew up kind of around that diversity of opinions and how we look as well, and who we are and our origins.
So I can see you have a guitar behind you. So it looks
Yes.
like, from everything that I've learned about you, you, somewhat like me, have lived many lives. You have evolved, you've changed, you've pivoted, you've done many things. Tell me a little bit about that. So if we were to meet the 20-year-old version of you before we moved to where we are today, who would we have met? What were they like?
That's a brilliant question. I've never been asked that before. That's awesome. I think at the time I was someone who wanted to be a rock and roll singer, in particular rock and metal. My biggest thing is David Coverdale, who's the White Snake. So White Snake, I wanted to be Dio, Ronnie James Dio, who's part of Rainbow. This was my life, and that was my hope. And for me, getting guitar and learning how to sing and getting on a band, that was like I'm achieving my life's dream. And I ended up leading a band, several actually, and having groupies even in Syria and singing. I mean, Syria is all about, of course, Arabic music, but we had a small group of people that loved rock music, that loved other kind of Western music. And that was me. I just loved it. That's the most important thing for me in life. I never imagined anything. It's like, if I want anything, I was studying engineering. If I want anything, is to be that, head leader of a band. And of course, that went out the window by the time I traveled to Dubai in my early 30s.
So, what would the 20-year-old, and I've often thought about this, if the 20-year-old you met you now, would they think that that's where they would have ended up doing and
Oh,
being
hell
and
no.
living?
No, I never thought that I would. I mean, my biggest thing is like, I want to be part of the music industry. I wanted to travel. My biggest dream is to travel to the US and to have my album out. I even used to compose songs. And none of this was even possible. The idea that you can write your own book and publish it, because 20, 30 years ago, there were these established industries
Mm.
that you have to go that route. And for me, it was impossible. How come a kid from Damascus can get there? I didn't have the means. We were poor. I had no clue where to start. So I did what I could do. Whatever I have, whatever opportunity, I kind of poured my all into it and got the most out of it.
Mm.
Because for me, there wasn't like a someday I can get that. The proverbial, people say, you can be anything you want, or you can be president. You grow up and you can
Mm.
be anything. Well, you grew up in Damascus, there is nothing you can be. You can't be president. You can't lead in any meaningful way because we were a dictatorship. All you could do is survive, maybe get a house and car, maybe. Car was a big thing. To give you context, an engineer would be paid $100 per month.
Mhm.
And that's like an electrical engineer who studied 5 years will paid $100 per month. That's the maximum. So survival was the key thing, and getting a little bit of money to survive was the maximum we could do.
So then tell me, how were you able to leave? And then you said you went to Dubai from there?
Yes.
So what did that look like? Because if you are living in this type of society, what was it that made you what was it that gave you the courage and the bravery to leave and go somewhere new?
Mm. Fair. I would say I didn't have courage. If I want to be honest, what I did have is no expectations of the future because of where I grew up. Now, I'm very ambitious and I want to do great things, but it was mostly in the moment. I didn't have, like, right now, if someone grows up, let's say in North America, especially, let's say what I was doing, building businesses at the time, you would imagine that, oh, I want to build that business, sell that business, go public, or become an investor, exit at a certain, or making a lot of money. For me, that wasn't even a possibility. And I didn't know enough about business. At the time, the internet was just starting. So I was just about to start learning. We don't have books about business at the time in Syria because most of the books were literature, politics, or philosophy, which was great. I was reading that, but I didn't have business education, which is why I failed big later. But for me, it was like, this is as good as it gets. So what can I do now? I was very attuned to the present rather than rather than what will this be in 3-4 years.
Mhm.
And that, I think, while kind of limited my ambitions, it was, I wanted to get the most out of right now.
Mhm.
And it became instantaneous for me. I was like, what can I do in this week? And that led to when I built a company, did like games online. It was a partnership with someone. It was like a handshake partnership. The first company we worked with was the Disney of the Middle East, called Spacetoon. They loved our work. Within 3 months, we built a great website for them. And I had no idea what I was doing. The team was selected like a ragtag band of people who didn't know what to do. And then the company acquired our team. I didn't know what that meant, but they basically took the team and offered me a position in Dubai. For me, going to Dubai is like anything out of here, because
Mm.
it meant that it's a step forward. I had no clue where that takes me.
Yeah.
I had no clue what would come out of it. I just knew that at the moment it was the best choice. And I said yes. And the consequences were in some ways good and in some ways, really interesting, I would say.
Well, I want to hear about the interesting. Someone
Sure.
says it was interesting. I want to hear a little more. So tell me about that. What was it like going to Dubai after living in Syria and then this new
Yeah.
venture that you're doing? How did all of that go? How did it
Yeah.
unfold?
It went horribly wrong. Everything. That's why I think I don't kind of live so much in what it can be. Of course, as a strategist and someone who loves what the future can look like, I have my dreams and I want something, but I am so used to be knocked down out of anything that I want. Like even the first guitar I got, I couldn't get a guitar. It was too expensive. $100 guitar means my father has to let go of 2 months' salary. He used to work as a journalist. So for me, the first guitar I started on was a guitar I borrowed from someone. The strings were this high. It was painful to work on. Everything I did was really hard. So when
Yeah.
I went to Dubai, the vice president who architected the deal left in 3 months. So I was left. And the person who had a vision for the company, everyone left behind who hated him, didn't want to pursue that vision. So here I am in a new job and nobody wanted to work with me. And at the moment, that's horrible because it was like, oh, finally, I'm on a track to build a career or
Yeah.
whatever other people consider a career. I used that I said, what is possible for me? And what was possible is to jump to different teams. And I ended up within the company starting 10 companies within that. That's how I ended up like the half of the companies I started 4 Spacetune in that role, jumping from one team to the other, helping them start. Honestly, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I just knew that, hey, this seems like a good idea. Can we work together? And I had some skills of preparing presentations and writing. So that went really handy in helping them kind of prepare the pitch deck, design it. And they started talking among each other. So every team, once they finished, the other team will have me. Not having a goal or a prospect of a better future ended up helping me more than I thought. And that's why I advocate stop waiting for what would happen when I have the title, the job, when people appreciate my talent, then I'll be able to make it. I used to believe that as well, but because I only had the options in front of me and I poured myself into them, I kind of got as like, oh, this is interesting. And I started building companies as a way of being. It's something that was not even possible or in the realm of possibility because I didn't know that such a thing existed.
Yeah. So where did things go from there then? Let's just keep going. Tell me about that. You have helped all these different teams create these ventures and so on.
I am not hearing you, Catherine, for some reason.
I see my audio is working on this
It's like
side.
maybe problem is my end. Can you? Yes.
So I would love to hear then, how does that evolve? So you're helping all these different teams. So where does that go from there?
Yeah. I think that the biggest thing that I had is I was like a kid, didn't know any better. And I think that helped me because I kind of took on things that were far bigger than anyone would. People would tell me, like, why you're doing that. People were so established. Let's take the advertising industry. I started as a graphic designer, was studying just as a thing to pay myself through college. And everyone around me, when I designed my own business card, would say, well, you didn't go through the advertising industry. Nobody told you that you're an art director. You can't call yourself art director. Nobody told you you're a creative director. You can't call yourself a creative director. I remember that thing in the movie The Social Network when they created their business card and said CEO bitch. It's like somebody claiming that and literally did that, but from not knowing, not from hubris. I tell myself, it's like I didn't know any better. And I just went along with what was possible for me. And I think that kind of defined my life because an opportunity would appear and I made the choice in the moment. I didn't have, this doesn't align with where I want to go or my career trajectory is like, this is a cool opportunity. Let's jump in. And I ended up working on a first animation from the UAE, the first jewelry designer from that part, building the #1 marketplace for Middle Eastern art. I put 1,200 Arabic artists online when they didn't have websites. So I ended up doing all these things. And if somebody would told me, what do you plan to do? They weren't on my plan at all.
Yes.
My plan was to talk in TEDx or in TED at the times. Like I want to speak in TED. That was like the ultimate. I want to have a Mercedes SLS as my car. I want to climb Mount Everest. Like all of the cliche, my vision board was filled with cliches. And I did none of them.
It's really fascinating listening to you say that because I was in the exact same position when I moved to Cyprus at 22. I had no teaching experience whatsoever. But I also was so naive that I didn't know I should have teaching experience. You hired me, so like, I guess you think I can do it. I started teaching, and I think sometimes you just have a natural ability. I had a natural ability to connect with kids. I had babysat kids my whole life. I had two younger brothers. I was like, this is just what I've been doing, except now you've actually given me something to teach them, and doesn't have to come out of my mind. Much like you, they were only going to pay me £200 a month, which wasn't enough to survive on. And so I figured I had to go and get another job. But it never crossed my mind that working from 6:30 in the morning till 1:30 and then starting another job from 2 o'clock to 8 o'clock might be tiring. It's just what I had to do.
Mm.
And then the next year I said, well, I'm just going to apply. I'm going to start applying. And where they had very elite private English schools where the creme de la creme of society put their children, right? So I said, well, I'll just apply at those schools every year. And every year I will escalate the level of school that I apply to. The people who lived there, you get a job in one school and you stay there for 25 years. And I said, but why would I do that? And they said, because that's what you do. And I'm like, but that's not what I do. I want to work in every school. I want to gain the experience from every school because in my mind, I wanted to be a professor in university. And so the way to do that was work in every one of the best schools every few years, grab all that experience. And now when I do my master's degree, I'll have all this experience to put toward that. So in my mind, it made sense. Everyone else thought I was crazy, like moving around, bouncing around schools and so on. But at the end of the day, sometimes crazy wins out because I did have the experience when I got to the university level. I had been introduced to all these different families of influence from all the different schools that I worked at. So it was sort of like fast tracking experience. I really wanted to move forward quickly in a country that I had never lived in before at such a young age. The way that I only knew to do that was let's just keep leveling up the schools that I teach at, and I'll just keep getting better and better experience. When you don't have any preconceived stories and people telling you what you're supposed to do, but you don't listen, it will benefit you many times. I think today we are watered down because of all the noise out there, and everyone has an opinion about what we do, what we say, how we look. So I almost go back and think, what happened to her? Let's bring her back again, right? Where you're almost fearless because in your mind, it's a good idea and you just don't see anything wrong with it.
I completely hear you. It's a combination of many things. I'm sure you heard of that study when they teach certain apes that if they go up a certain tree, they shock them or something. So when there's a new ape that joins the group and they try to climb, they don't know, the other apes actually beat him down to not get shocked. And I think there's part of that where people want you to follow the predetermined or the beaten path because it maintains the social order. And there is something to that in certain areas. And the other thing is that there are two kinds of work that you do. One is you're flying a plane or you're a doctor or you're an engineer, you're building something. There are certain established rules that you have to spend time learning it, building on it, so that you don't kill people. The risk is too high for you not to spend enough time to learn before we allow you to do something. But there are other things in life where you can learn so much more and you can accelerate so much more when you go into it with a more of a discovery scientific approach where you're kind of poking around, finding a way. And that's how even in marketing, for example, most of the startups that grew in the past 2 decades grew out of experimentation or what we call growth hacking, testing things and what works and doubling down on what works. There was really, the methodology is the scientific methodology, but there was no predetermined, here's the budget, here's how you build. And I think that is how I kind of articulated is that, have something in mind you want to seek.
Mhm.
but don't let that blind you
Mm.
from the treasures you find along the way.
Yeah.
Let's say I wanted to climb Mount Everest, it was my thing. Along the way, if I met somebody important and they mean the world to me, why shouldn't I stay there? It kind of shocks me when people like, no, they make choices and I decided to go that way. I know you decided, but you're now a different person. You asked me about my 20-year-old. When I was 30, I'm a different person. Why should I live by the decisions of the 20-year-old or even the, 29 and 360 days
Mhm.
person? I am now, I'm in this moment right now, and I need to make the choices in the moment right now. The biggest question I ask people to ask themselves, and I talk about stop looking for answers, focus on the questions, because every question, I call it questions are the shit. Every question can have a million answers. They're
Mhm.
the most powerful thing you have. So ask yourself, what really matters to you now? Not
Mhm.
what mattered to you yesterday,
Mhm.
not why you're on it. What I ask people, why you're building a career? Because you're supposed to build a career, just like you said, you're supposed to do it this way.
Mhm.
No, ask yourself what matters to you now, and open yourself to different answers, and maybe try to explore instead of finding the right answer.
Yeah. I would love to fast forward now to what you do today
Mm.
and what led you to what you do today.
Yeah. I landed in Vancouver in 2014 and I stumbled on something called the startup community. This thing was just popping up in Dubai at the time, startups and the idea. And of course, I knew about tech companies, but experiencing something was completely different. I tried the beaten path where I learned to do my resume, went through settlement services, very thankful for them. And I applied to 200 jobs and got one lousy interview. I was like, why
Mhm.
is it not working? Now, I have 20 years of
Yeah.
background, built companies. I had two successful agencies before coming here, and the market is telling me you don't have market experience. I
Yeah.
ended up working as a junior content marketer in a tech company. The biggest gift was engaging in that community. And Launch Academy, which was the number one incubator in Western Canada, I joined it because I wanted a community. And I was blown away by people who are very successful, exited companies, spending time to mentor me. I was like, wow, this is amazing. I've never had that experience. And I said, how can I help? And I usually, that's the question that gets me into trouble, but also opens up
Yeah.
opportunities. People said, well, you seem to have experience in marketing. Can you mentor a few people? I said, yeah. And I loved it. I absolutely fell in love with it because honestly, you get to work with someone on their idea and then you leave them to build that idea. I don't have to build it. I can just come up with ideas and directions, like the perfect situation. The Launch Academy was kind of this proverbial corner on the street where everyone passed through. So I got to meet so many people. So I was like, I love this thing. And I went there on so many times and helped and mentored. And I wasn't paid. It's a nonprofit, it's a community. At a certain point, they came to me and said, will you become the GM? And I was like, wow, this is amazing. I've never thought this would be the last job I would ever have. I've had very few jobs and I loved working there, loved helping entrepreneurs, and I got so much learning. Then I stumbled on a workshop teaching blockchain, and I loved the technology, being a geek. So I started teaching, and that led me to starting Nexus Centrum as a teaching company and helping artists, kind of my love for artists and culture, because I think culture brings people together. So I ended up trying to help museums and artists sell their work using blockchain technology, now using AI. And that led me to where we are. We are a transformational company that works with companies and help them use technology to transform their impact in the world. So that is a series of decisions that I never thought I would actually choose, but I stumbled into them because of the things that showed up and I followed what I like. That is probably my strongest capability, to be able to follow something I like, even though at the moment it makes zero sense, which is writing even this book. I wrote like 4 books before it. And when I was writing those books, I was writing a book to get a book so I can use the book to promote me.
Mm-hmm.
But then, and by the time I finish half of it, it's like, this book means nothing to me. And it was really hard to leave it because there was so much work put into it, but I had the sense to leave it. And then when I wrote this book, it was more like me leaving something for my kids and the people that I don't get to mentor in person. Can I give them something that will help them in their lives? The drive and the purpose behind that made it something like, I feel it's timeless. I read it every other day. I read this like, wow, I know, I can't believe I wrote this thing. that is how I got to where I am. It's just a series of decisions that I never thought I would make until the moment came up.
Why don't we talk about your book for a little bit? I love that you said that because I find that if you just remain open minded about most everything in life, that's when you get the opportunities. You never really thought about going down that path. But then because you stay open minded, you say, well, you know what? Let me think about that for a minute. Well, it actually kind of makes sense. And then you start creating these paths in your mind of how that makes sense. And then you go for it. So your book is called The Dark Art of Life Mastery. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
What is it about? What drove you to write this book? And what is the core messaging in it that you really wanted to leave people with?
I think the core message of the book is the lie that we lie ourselves that we have time, that time is a thing. Time doesn't exist. All that exists is the current moment. It's a construct. We try to justify why we have memories and how we plan for the future. But in reality, all that exists is the current moment. Everything that you can do, everything that you can create an impact, how you change your future, how you rationalize your past, where you spend your time is all in the present moment. What I got bored of is meeting those wonderful people, and all they're doing is postponing their time, what they want to do in life. Is like, why you're not doing this, why you're not. I see wonderful people that can change the world and can make a huge impact. I was like, why you're not doing it? Once I get this, once I get that, once I reach this, I see people wasting their life away because of sunken cost fallacy. They're doing things because they did things, or they're doing things because hopefully in the future there is some sort of outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, but you have this available right now. They're sitting in their fear of what if they made a mistake. So I wanted to write a book to say, first of all, it's okay. Time is a lie. You have only this moment, and this moment is where everything happens. The other thing is that it's okay to make wrong choices. You can make a wrong choice right now. The next moment comes in, and you can make a different choice. That's the idea, that we are so fearful of living that we end up not living. We didn't have that when we were 5-year-olds. In
Yeah.
5-year-old, you play around and you play around some more and you discover until you hurt yourself or you fall. And that's the kind of innocence I wanted to use the book to bring back to adults, especially people like my son, my daughter. I wanted them to have access to life. I believe right now that I'm experiencing the joy of life. And that means the ups and downs. It's not stable. I have the ability to be in my life rather than watching my life goes by. And this is an experience I wish for other people.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way I could make it happen is mentoring them myself or having my book to leave with them. And that's my hope. That's why I wrote it.
I love that. We align very strongly with that. I use the word urgency. Live life with some urgency. You have an idea and you've thought about it, just do it. Just try it. You can think about, well, what if this and what if that? So what? And that's what I started saying to myself, because I used to be like that. What if and what would people say? And now I just say, well, so what? Okay, so it doesn't work. So what? So you try something else. Why is that the end of the world? We're not talking about getting a second mortgage on your home and things like that. We're talking about moving forward on an idea to see if it has legs, moving forward on an opportunity to see if it does align with this idea. But when I am coaching entrepreneurs, I want them to know is have some clarity of what your path ahead looks like, what you want it to be, so that you know if these opportunities that you encounter are aligned with where you're going. Because sometimes you can be taken off course too many times and never seem to get back to where you wanted to be, especially if you do have that open mind. So it's having some clarity of, well, this is who I am. These are my values. But, I love your title of that book, The Dark Art of Life Mastery. I think that is what it is. It can be light and dark. And you have to experience both to know if you are mastering life or not, right? There is no life without a little bit of darkness to it, because that's where you learn the lessons
100%.
and become really good going through all the hardship and hurdles and those experiences. When anyone gets into business, unless you have the negative experiences, you don't become better at business. you're just going to flatline. You never actually up level your skills, your mindset, all of these things.
Yeah, it's like nothing ventured, nothing gained. And I think there are several things that kind of, I try to simplify, but they are complex, which is there are so many things playing in the background. When you want to enter into business, we think there are parameters of success that other people have set, whether it's a lot of money or whether, a certain level of the company that needs success, acknowledgement, awards, all of that. And that may be all important if you choose to. There is nothing wrong with choosing these things. But the question that I always kind of push on people, have you chosen that? Is it your choice, or did you buy in to the choice of others? And it's okay if you did, as long as you're aware, as long as the problem is living life with lack of awareness, which is you buy into something like going on a career and halfway, and we see people all the time, they call it midlife crisis, where you ask yourself, well, I'm here. Did I choose all of this? Or why did I do all of this? And I think the biggest legacy and why I say life of joy is that all of the things I did and the reason I did them is my choice. The failures, and when you own these kind of things, when you acknowledge it, it gives you freedom because you say, I own my choice. I don't own what's going to happen. You can make a choice and you don't own the result because you don't control it. Life will throw at you, the sea of life will throw at you all that you might want to go this way and waves throw you this way. All you can do is make a choice again instead of soaking into the regret and what you can and what you can't and why did you choose that. If you own your choices and you try and you don't treat life like a series of big bets, it's like, oh, I'll make this bet and I'll get that. And if you live it based on your choices and what you want out of it, as you said, I love that question. What is my 20-year-old? A lot of us are living based on the desires of the previous self rather than what we want future self.
Yeah, 100%. I'd love to get your take on what excites you about where technology, AI, and everything is headed. There are so many differing opinions. You have the media saying one thing about AI, you have the people who are in it who say another thing. What are your thoughts about where everything is headed?
Unfortunately, we have, I'm writing about that. Like there is so much confusion and pressure for people leading this sector that we don't have honesty. So we can't tell truth from fiction. Let's put it this way. They said by 2025 or 2026, next year, we will have, AGI and the world will be different. And we heard when blockchain came about, it's like, oh, all currencies will be thrown away and we will use cryptocurrency. Maybe that will happen right now. But it's been like, what is it, from 2009? And it's been 16 years.
Yeah.
And nothing has materialized from what we thought. We're exceptionally bad at predicting what's going to happen in the next 5-10 years. In the long term, a lot of things do end up happening. If you look at what we have right now, the technologies we have right now are no less than magic 100 years ago. So we're probably going to get AI that is remarkable. But the question is, what do we choose to do with it? And I think that's far more important than what the technology is. If we look at the phone, the technology is remarkable. I studied integrated circuits, and what they've been able to do right now, the technology underlying those chips and what they do is incredible. But even 20 years ago, we wouldn't imagine that we will get this way. The idea is, what are we doing with it?
Right.
The strongest technology is going to help us do a better to-do list or to do more with our time. And what are we doing with our time? Well, we're, building companies to do what? Are we making people's lives better? And that's what I choose. The biggest thing for me for AI is what we have access to. For the first time ever, I can go about any topic. I can have access to all of the thinking of that topic in the moment. Before, I have to go to a library, spend several months reading hundreds of books, and I may not retain even those, and I have to contain notes. It's so hard. Right now, if there's a topic, I can say to ChatGPT and say, what is the amalgamation of what the philosophers thought about this? And how does it relate to this idea? And how does it relate to that idea? And I think the biggest thing, if we use it that way, we can access human wisdom and we can learn it in the moment when we need it. It's not that AI will help us solve the problems, it's that us with AI will be able to solve far bigger problems and far more important problems. So that is what it means to me and what I'm hoping people start to discover rather than, oh, it can help me fill the internet with worthless article. That's the worst this technology can do. I think it can help a lot, but it needs a shift in the architecture of how we do things and why we do things, which is
Hmm.
far more important.
Yeah, I agree. As we wrap up, this is what I would like to know. What is something that you still want to build or write or become over the next few years?
You have the greatest questions, I think, Kath. This is awesome. I'm enjoying the conversation very much. And I love how we're aligning on many of the things that you talk about regularly. I think your story is also remarkable as well, but in its own right. I think the thing I wanna build the most is the next world. And I know this is massive, but I'm no short of trying to wish for bigger things. And this is what I'm working towards. I want to build a better world, starting with my kids, the people I'm mentoring, the people I'm talking to, starting with the people that are reading the book, with my writing. I want to build a world where people are far more aware, far more at choice, rather than following the footsteps of others just because they say so. And when we are a choice, we end up making the best choices, in my opinion. If we look at the trajectory of where we are, every single one of us right now is far richer to a certain extent. Obviously, there's a lot of suffering in the world and a lot to be fixed. But in general, I would say, are we living better than kings lived 100 years ago in every measure? Running water, clean toilets, the stuff that we take.
Yes.
Here we are, thousands of miles away, talking together in instantaneous time. So in every aspect, we are better. The question is, are we a choice to choose to rebuild the world so that we can take that better and make it serve us?
Mhm.
Right now, I think the biggest issue is that we're in service of this world. And unless you sit at the top of this world, you're not gaining the benefits. And I think we can flip that and say, we can actually create a world that is service of all of us.
Mhm.
And I truly think that's possible. And that's what I'm working towards. I'm working towards it through my collaborations on accelerators and programs that help people think that way, change the way they thinking, change the way they work. And I do believe in taking an idea that is valuable to others, delivering it in such a way and having a reciprocal cycle. I think that idea is very powerful. And I want to see where we can take it and how we can do it together as a species so that we can build up the next version of our world.
I love that. For anyone who wants to explore your writing or follow what you're creating, where is the best place for them to start to reach out or to just find you?
HusseinHallak.com. Just search my name. You can connect with me on LinkedIn on HusseinHallak.com. And the book is coming out in July 8th. So hopefully you'll find it helpful. And yeah, reach out for a conversation. That's how we ended up talking.
Love it. And I will make sure that I link your website below. If you're watching this on video, you can find the link below. If you're listening to it on a podcast, it will be in the podcast notes. If this conversation has shifted something for you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with a friend, share it with a loved one, leave a review, tag us online. These are the kind of conversations that deserve to travel throughout borders. Whether you are listening on the other side of the world, it doesn't matter because the messaging resonates everywhere. And your support by downloading, liking, and following this show helps a lot. Thank you, everyone, for tuning into Mindset Medicine. Thank you, Hussein, for being a wonderful guest today. I will see all of you next time. Bye for now.